Did Ayrton Senna get away with too much in Formula One? Now, before anyone starts typing angrily in the comments like they've been personally attacked, this isn't a Senna was bad video. It's more of a, hang on a minute, how did he get away with that and still become a legend kind of video? Because when we talk about Ayrton Senna, we usually talk about speed, magic laps, wet weather chaos, and Monaco dominance. All the highlight reel stuff. But there is another side to him that gets conveniently swept under the rug, and that's the aggressive, borderline chaotic, occasionally villain arc version of Senna. Sounds like someone we know quite well. So let's start with the obvious one. Suzuka 1990. The title is on the line, it's Senna versus Prost, and Senna starts on pole. But the FIA, out of nowhere, decides to move the pole position to the dirty side of the grid. Senna is pretty pissed off about this, and rightly so. So he basically just goes, no, that's not happening. So when the race started, into turn one, he didn't exactly race Prost. He basically treats the first corner as a demolition derby. They collide, both out, Senna wins the championship. We all know the story. But the sport basically collectively just goes, that's all right. Congratulations, Mr. Senna. And Senna even admitted that he didn't even try to avoid it, which isn't something you usually hear from a world champion. But the thing is, Suzuka wasn't even just a one-off. Senna's driving philosophy was basically, if there's a gap, I'm going to go for it, and I'll deal with the consequences later. I mean, we all know his famous quote, if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you are no longer a racing driver. Which sounds great when it works, but when it doesn't work, it can go horribly, and it can be dangerous. Which by today's standards for the FIA is a big fat nope. Safety is everything these days. It's almost like Senna's driving wasn't just aggressive, it was commitment at all costs. Sometimes genius, sometimes it was just never going to work. And I think he knew that. The bottom line is, modern Formula One would not tolerate what happened back then. Today you've got track limits and penalties galore. Stewards watching every single move like they're reviewing CCTV at Heathrow Airport. But back in the 80s and early 90s, it was more like, yeah, that looked a bit naughty, but carry on. So the question naturally becomes, was Senna just racing in a different era, or was he actually pushing the boundaries for that time as well? Let's go back to his rivalry with Prost again. It wasn't just two drivers competing, it was psychological warfare at 200 miles per hour. And it didn't just stay on track either. There was politics, mind games, team tensions at McLaren that basically required therapy services. The hate was real, just like the degradation of Rosberg and Hamilton's friendship. I mean, that was intense. A bit like camping. Here's where the debate gets slightly tricky, because Senna didn't see himself as a dirty driver. He saw himself as absolutely always within his rights to go for a move. If a move was possible, it had to be taken. If a gap existed, it was basically an invitation. And that mindset is exactly why people either worship him or quietly think he'd actually give Kevin Magnussen a run for his money when it comes to licence penalty points. But we've got to be fair. Every great driver has a bit of an edge. James Hunt, Michael Schumacher, Max Verstappen, even Prost when he needed to be. But Senna's edge was a little bit different. It wasn't always calculated, and it wasn't always strategic. It was somewhat emotional. Intense. Just like camping. You could even call it spiritual in how committed he was to every single lap, which was great for speed, but not always great for clean racing. But then who enjoys a perfectly clean race? But here's where history can complicate things. Because Senna never had the long decline phase. He didn't get to stick around long enough to become past it or finished. He died at the 1994 Imola Grand Prix, a weekend that took not just one but two drivers, Senna and Roland Ratzenberger. And it also very nearly claimed the life of Rubens Barrichello as well. After that weekend, the sport changed, safety changed, and so did how people remembered Senna. Because the thing is, when someone dies at the peak of their career, they don't get re-evaluated in time as it goes on. They get frozen as that person. It's the same with musicians and movie stars. Those that die young and famous are forever cemented as the person that they were at that moment. Take someone like Amy Winehouse or Kurt Cobain. We never got the chance to see what they would become throughout the rest of their musical careers or the person they would become. Senna didn't have those declining years and didn't have the chance to watch from the sidelines. So the question is, if Senna had continued racing for another 5 or so years, would we still talk about him in the same way? Or would we be arguing about penalties and rivalries and saying he's still fast, but he's not what he used to be? Sort of how people are starting to do with Hamilton and Alonso. History doesn't always judge fairly, is what I'm saying. It just remembers the highlights. And Senna has one of the most edited highlight reels in sporting history, let alone just Formula One. So, did he get away with too much? Yeah, probably. But most of the things that he got away with are also the reasons that he became legendary in the first place. The aggression, the risk-taking, the refusal to back out. That's the same trait that gave us Monaco laps in the rain that looked like perfection. It's the same trait that made him such a spectacle to watch on the track. And it's the same trait that's made him completely unforgettable. So maybe the real answer is Senna didn't get away with too much because people didn't notice. He got away with it because for a long time, winning made everything look justified. And in Formula One, that is usually how legends are made. Not by being perfect, but by being edgy, by being fast enough that nobody can agree whether you were right or wrong. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, much love. Please do like and subscribe. It really helps. Cheers.